Have you ever been in a car late at night, looked over at the person next to you, and felt a sudden, chilling certainty that they weren't entirely human? It's a thought that can curdle your blood, a fear that turns a mundane ride into a waking nightmare. Tonight, we're diving into a story that blurs the line between the living and the spectral, a tale that has been whispered among night drivers for years. This is the story of the 3 a.m. curse. Our story begins with a man named Min. Min wasn't your average 9-2-FIVER. He was a ride-hailing driver, a modern-day charioteer, navigating the concrete jungles of the city long after most people were asleep. He loved the night, the empty streets, the cool air, the quiet hum of his engine. It was his sanctuary. For Min, the hours between midnight and dawn were the most profitable and the most peaceful. Or so he thought. His colleagues, seasoned veterans of the night shift, had warned him. They spoke in hushed tones about the 3 a.m. rule. Don't drive near the old cemeteries, they'd say. Avoid the long, dark road that winds past the abandoned textile factory. And whatever you do, if you get a ride request at precisely 3 a.m. from those areas, just cancel Italiano. Min, being a rational man, would just chuckle. Ghosts don't pay the bills, he'd joke, dismissing their warnings as a cocktail of sleep deprivation and old superstitions. He believed in what he could see, touch, and deposit in his bank account. He was about to learn that some things are real, whether you believe in them or not. One Tuesday night, or rather, Wednesday morning, the city was unusually still. The rain had just stopped, leaving the streets slick and gleaming under the orange glow of the streetlights. It was almost 3 a.m. Min was thinking about calling it a night when his phone chimed with a new ride request. The pickup location was right at the edge of the old city cemetery, a place notorious for its unsettling history. The destination was a nondescript address across town. For a split second, the old-timer's warnings echoed in his mind. But the fare was good, too good to pass up. He swiped to accept as he pulled up to the cemetery gates. His headlights cut through the misty darkness. Two figures emerged from the shadows. It was a young woman, frail and pale, holding the hand of a small child. The woman wore a simple, old-fashioned dress that seemed out of place, and the child was unnervingly still. Min unlocked the doors. The woman opened the back door, gently ushering the child in before sliding in herself. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper, and it seemed to carry a profound sadness. "No problem at all." "Where are we headed?" Min asked, even though he had the address on his GPS. She just nodded towards the screen, her eyes remaining fixed on the road ahead. A strange coldness filled the car, the kind of damp chill that seeps right into your bones. Min cranked up the heat, but it did little to combat the icy feeling. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman was staring straight ahead, her face as white as a porcelain doll. The child sat beside her, silent, his face hidden in the shadows. There was something odd about them. They weren't wet, despite the recent downpour. Not a single drop of rain on their clothes. The drive was silent and tense. Min tried to make small talk, a habit to make his passengers feel comfortable. "Quiet night, huh?" he ventured. The woman didn't respond. She just continued to stare forward, her expression unchanging. The child remained completely motionless. Min's unease grew with every passing block. He felt like he was driving a hearse, not a taxi. The silence was so heavy it felt like a physical weight. The only sound was the rhythmic swish of the wipers and the hum of the engine. He glanced at the rearview mirror again. The woman's eyes met his for a fleeting second. They were dark, empty pools of sorrow. In that moment, a wave of sheer terror washed over Min. It wasn't just a feeling of being creeped out. It was a primal, instinctual fear. His heart hammered against his ribs. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. He told himself to calm down. It was just a strange passenger. The night shift was full of them. Finally, the GPS announced they had arrived at the destination. It was an old dilapidated apartment building, its windows dark and empty like vacant eyes. The place looked like it had been abandoned for decades. "We're here," Min said, his voice a little shaky. He turned around to face them, and his blood ran cold. The back seat was empty. Completely, utterly empty. Min's mind raced. How? How could they have gotten out? He hadn't heard the doors open. He hadn't stopped the car. He scrambled out, his heart pounding in his ears, and checked the back doors. They were still locked from the inside. Panic set in. He looked up and down the deserted street. There was no one. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air. Shaking, he got back into his car. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just exhausted, hallucinating. Maybe they were pranksters who had somehow slipped out. But how? He looked at his phone. The ride was still active. He had to end it to get paid. With a trembling finger, he swiped to complete the trip. The app showed the payment method. Cash. Min let out a sigh that was half relief, half despair. Of course, it was cash. He wouldn't be paid. He was about to drive away, to put this whole bizarre experience behind him, when he noticed something on the back seat. Right where the woman had been sitting, there was a small pile of something. He reached back and picked it up. It wasn't cash. It was a stack of old, yellowed votive paper, the kind people burn as offerings for the dead, and scattered among the papers were a few dry, brittle leaves. A cold dread spread through him, paralyzing him. The whispers of the other drivers, the warnings about 3 a.m., the cemetery, the vanishing passengers. It all came crashing down on him. It was real. He had just given a ride to the dead. Min drove home in a daze, the votive paper clutched in his hand. He didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the woman's sorrowful face, her dark, empty eyes. The chilling silence of the car echoed in his ears. He became obsessed. He started researching the old apartment building and the cemetery. He discovered a local legend, a story about a young mother and her child who had perished in a fire at that very apartment building decades ago. They said her spirit still wandered, forever trying to take her child home. Min stopped driving the night shift. He tried to go back to a normal life, but the terror of that night was branded onto his soul. The experience had broken something inside him. He would often wake up in a cold sweat at exactly 3 a.m., the phantom chill of his spectral passengers returning to haunt him. This story, or versions of it, is a chilling staple in the folklore of night drivers around the world. Whether it's a taxi in a bustling city or a rideshare on a lonely country road, the tale of the phantom passenger persists. It serves as a stark reminder that when you drive through the darkness, you're never truly alone. There are things that linger in the shadows, waiting for a ride. So, the next time you're out late, and you see a lone car cruising down an empty street, think of Min. Think of the drivers who brave the darkness, who sometimes pick up more than just a paying customer. And if you happen to be a driver yourself, and a request comes in from a haunted place at that ungodly hour, maybe, just maybe, you should listen to the old-timers and just cancel the ride. Thank you so much for joining me on this terrifying journey tonight. If this story sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and always check your backseat. Have you ever held an old piece of tech and felt a strange chill? A sense that it holds more than just data that it holds? Memories. Not just the ones you saved, but something else entirely. What if your old phone, that brick you keep in a drawer, wasn't just obsolete? What if it was a gateway? This is a story that blurs the line between a digital glitch and a digital haunting. It starts with a friend of mine. Let's call him Alex. A few years ago, Alex was cleaning out his parents' attic and stumbled upon a box of his old things. Inside, nestled amongst yearbooks and concert ticket stubs, was his first real smartphone. You know, the type clunky small screen? A relic by today's standards. On a whim, he charged it up. He half expected it not to even turn on, but to his surprise, the screen flickered to life. The familiar, outdated home screen appeared, a digital time capsule. He chuckled, scrolling through old photos, crinky text messages, and a contact list of people he hadn't spoken to in a decade. It was a fun trip down memory lane, and he thought nothing more of it. He left it on his nightstand, a quirky little decoration. That's when things started to get weird. The first incident happened a few nights later. Alex was jolted awake by a sound. It was faint, garbled, like a radio caught between stations. He sat up, trying to place it. It was coming from the old phone. He picked it up. The screen was dark, but the faint, static-filled sound was definitely emanating from its tiny speaker. It sounded like whispers, fragments of conversations, layered over each other. He figured it was just some bizarre malfunction, a short circuit in the ancient hardware. He powered it off completely and went back to sleep, a little unsettled but not truly scared. A week later, it happened again. This time, the sound was clearer. Amidst the static, he could make out a voice. It was a woman's voice, soft and breathy, and it seemed to be repeating a single word, Aubert and Aubert. He couldn't quite make it out. He held the phone to his ear, his heart starting to pound. The screen was still black. There were no apps running, no calls coming in. Yet the voice persisted, a ghostly loop in the dead of night. This time, Alex couldn't just brush it off. He spent the next day trying to figure it out. He factory reset the phone, wiping everything. He checked online forums for similar issues with this model. Nothing. No one had ever reported their phone spontaneously playing garbled audio while turned off. He decided to leave it on, just to see if it would happen again. The next day, while he was at work, his roommate called him, sounding panicked. "Alex, you need to come home. Your old phone is doing something." When Alex rushed back, he found his roommate standing in the doorway of his bedroom, pale as a sheet. From inside the room, a voice was speaking. It was clear as day now. An old man's voice, calm and measured. It wasn't a loop. It was a conversation, but only one side of it. The voice was saying things like, "Yes, I understand. It will be soon. Don't worry, she won't feel a thing." Alex felt a cold dread wash over him. Who was this man? Who was he talking to? He grabbed the phone. The audio file player was open, playing a file named recording_001. A file that hadn't been there before the factory reset. A file he had never made. He stopped the playback, and the room fell into an eerie silence. His roommate just stared at him. "That's been going on for an hour," he whispered. Over the next few weeks, the phenomenon escalated. New recordings would appear out of nowhere. Most were just static and whispers, fragments of sentences that made no sense. But some were chillingly clear. There were always voices he didn't recognize, talking about things he didn't understand. It felt like he was eavesdropping on ghosts. He started listening to them, morbidly fascinated and terrified. He tried to record them on his new phone, but whenever he did, the playback would be pure static. It was as if the voices only existed within the circuits of that old device. He began to recognize some of the voices. There was the soft-spoken woman, the calm old man, and a child who would sometimes just hum a simple, haunting melody. The true horror began when he recognized a voice. One evening, a new recording appeared. He pressed play, and the voice of his grandmother filled the room. His grandmother, who had passed away 2 years prior. She wasn't speaking to him. She was talking to someone else, her voice filled with a familiar warmth. "Tell him I'm okay," she said. "Tell my boy I love him, and that I'm waiting." Alex dropped the phone. He was shaking, tears streaming down his face. This was impossible. It couldn't be real. But the voice, it was undeniably hers. Every inflection, every nuance, it was his grandma. He listened to the 30-second clip over and over, a mix of comfort and sheer terror. The phone was no longer just a weird glitch. It was a conduit, a direct line to ... somewhere else. But the comfort he felt from hearing his grandmother's voice was short-lived, because the messages started to change. A few months later, another recording appeared. This time it was the calm old man's voice again. But he wasn't calm anymore. It was urgent. Almost bleeding. "The bridge is unstable." The voice crackled. "The signal is weak. Tell her not to get on the 715. The brakes will fail." Tell her. The 715. Alex's blood ran cold. His sister, Sarah, took the 7:15 train to work every single morning. He immediately called her, his voice trembling. He didn't tell her about the ghost phone. She would have thought he was crazy. He just made up an excuse, begged her to work from home, said he had a family emergency and needed her. She was annoyed, but she eventually agreed. Later that day, the news broke. A local train had derailed due to a catastrophic brake failure. It was the 7:15. Several people were injured, some critically. Sarah would have been on that train. Alex sat in the dark, staring at the phone. It had saved his sister's life. But this wasn't a gift. It was a curse. What had he tuned into? Why him? The phone was no longer a curiosity. It was a heavy, terrifying responsibility. The voices continued, sometimes offering cryptic warnings, other times just sad, lonely whispers from the other side. Snippets of lives cut short, conversations left unfinished. He considered destroying the phone, smashing it with a hammer, throwing it in the river. But what if he missed a warning? What if someone else's life was on the line? He was trapped, tethered to this digital haunting. The recordings became his obsession. Lost sleep. He isolated himself, spending hours listening to the static, trying to decipher the whispers, waiting for the next message from the void. The phone had become a tombstone and an oracle all in one. It held the echoes of the dead, their last words, their regrets, their warnings. Alex realized that technology isn't just circuits and code. It's a vessel, and sometimes, when a vessel is old and forgotten, something else finds a way to fill it. He still has the phone, locked away in a safe. Sometimes, in the dead of night, he swears he can still hear it, faintly whispering through the metal box. A constant, chilling reminder that we are not alone, and that even in our modern world, some signals come from a place far beyond our understanding. Thanks for tuning in to this chilling tale. If you have your own story about technology and the unexplained, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Stay safe, stay curious, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that explore the darkness on the edge of our digital lives. See you next time.